Hello. How are we? Hi, Manica. Hello, everybody. What are we doing? We having a good day? Hello. Welcome to the stream. I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but the bird is having a bath in her water dish right now. Like a weirdo. She's silly. She's a silly lady. Hi guys, welcome to the critique stream. Aw, a little weird. I know, she's cute. That's true, she does have to keep clean. It's very important to have clean feathers. You know. Hello, hello. I just woke up right on time. I feel you. I slept in so much. So I've been on vacation for the holidays. And this last week was like my first week back at work. And oh my god, it's so hard to wake up in the morning. All right. Hygiene is important regardless of species. Exactly. Gotta stay clean so that your feathers are all nice. You know? Okay. Let's see. Who would like to go first? So any new folks who are in the chat, we're looking at our Patreon supporters work. So most of them, I think everyone is in chat right now. So yeah, which one of you would like to go first? We have Kladd. Actually, I don't know if Kladd is here. We have Kuroe, Pigment, LesBean, Ink, and Fitz. So, who would like to volunteer as tribute? Ink, you want to go first? Oh, Pigment should go first because they're on break. Are you okay with that, Ink? We could do Pigment and then Ink. Okay, Kuroe and Fitz are okay anywhere. And LesBean can go later. Okay, cool. So how about we do, yeah, Pigment, then Ink, then Fitz, Kuroe, LesBean. I'm not on break yet, maybe second? Okay, so we'll do Inks first. Cool. Okay, let's do it. Ink, you're up. Get ready. Let's go. All right. What did you say? Okay, so 2 of the 3 pieces you submitted are of your OC, the Mushroom Queen. Love her. 10 out of 10. Okay, so looking for general feedback. What can be inferred about the setting these are taking place in? Because you're working on adding environmental storytelling. Very good. How does the perspective look? How does the Queen's design look? Okay. And then, okay, so it's just for 1 and 2. Okay. All right. So, okay, so I'll start with like the vibe check because that's always a good way to start. So yeah, for setting wise, yeah, it feels very fantasy. It doesn't feel sci-fi to me. Just because they're using like pikes and it looks like a crossbow, yeah. And swords, you know, they're not using like guns and stuff, which might imply a more sci-fi setting. Yeah, so it reads very fantasy. I really like the designs of some of these creatures that are around. They feel very like almost like necromorphs from like Dead Space. I don't know where I'm getting that vibe, but I think it's just kind of like the way some of their like limbs are positioned, and they have like spiky claws and stuff like that. And like I really like this like beetle mount creature. I'm not sure if it's a beetle, but it has a very like horned beetle kind of head shape. Yeah, and it's got like arms and stuff coming out of its face. Like that is so necromorph, and I love it. It's so cool. The limbs and colors evoke that. Yeah, I think that's the vibe I'm getting. But yeah, it looks very much with the way you've color coded the scene. It feels very much like the queen is leading her people against a fight against this other faction, where her and her soldiers are very blue and purple and cool colors, and the soldiers have like mushrooms coming out of their head and stuff. Whereas the monsters they're fighting against have a very like a warmer palette. They're using a lot of like pinks and oranges. Yeah, so I think you've done a good job with kind of like setting the scene and using colors to really show the conflict, I guess. Sorry, what was your message, Fitz? Oh, second would be good. Okay, sorry. So okay, you can go after Ink. If Pigment isn't back or off work or on break. Okay, sorry about that, Fitz. Okay. Yeah, but anyways, so yeah, great work with the color on these. Yes, and I think because of the way you've used color on the background, it definitely feels like this cavern belongs to the Mushroom Queen, just because like it's using like these cool colors which are very similar to like her and her soldiers. And there's some parallel between like the oh gosh, is it stalagmites or stalactites? The ones from the ceiling. Anyways, the the glowy formations at the top are similar in color to like her hammer and the little highlights on her design. So yeah, so it feels like it's her home that is being invaded by these monsters and this little wizard guy. I sent an answer to a question someone asked me but didn't show up. Huh. I don't know. I went looking on the YouTube side and I didn't see anything like held for review, so I'm not sure if it's. Oh, hey, Kladd. Welcome. How dare you be late, Kladd? I'm very upset with you. I'll never forgive you for this. I hope you know that. Okay, sorry. Bones told me that we got a comment on one of our videos saying that I sound like a female Jordan Peterson, and I am upset. How could someone say this? I don't hear it either. I think they're just hearing my Canadian accent. Is it because I give like I've done videos where I give like motivational advice? I don't know. Anyways, I am livid. Okay. Hello. It's going good, Mr. Hero. Okay. As for perspective, I think there's a couple things that feel a bit off to me. Ursula is as far away from Jordan Peterson as he can get while still being Canadian. It's the word Twitter that's being held? Interesting. That's weird. Because I'm not getting anything on my end that's like, this comment is being held for review, so I don't know. That's super weird. I don't know why it would block the word Twitter. Maybe there's been a bunch of spam and YouTube's putting in filters or something. That's really weird. Anyways. Right, perspective. So I find... Okay, some things that you're doing really well. I like your use of layering to show depth and perspective on things. So like, I like how you have these foreground elements of the rocks at the front, and then you show the space by like where the characters are positioned and where the queen is positioned, and then we have layers of like there's the second level where people are fighting, and then there's this top layer with a window where they're like shooting down from, and then we get to see the ceiling up top. Like I think you've done a good job with like creating that environment and creating depth, where I think the perspective feels very off. It's... I think the horizon line is just kind of muddled. Like I'm not... Okay, so it feels like our camera, as it were, is like right at the queen's knees. So if our eye line is here, then like understandably we'd probably be seeing like kind of around the tops of her feet where you have them planted. And then but I find from there she gets very... There's a weird perspective thing happening where it feels like we're staring at her very head on, but she's also towering up into the distance because like she's getting smaller as we lead up. Whereas I feel like if there was this much distance where like you can see the little dude on her hammer is like really tiny in comparison to like the dude down here who's I'm assuming the same size, where there's a lot of distance between like down here and up here, and yet like I don't feel like I'm looking at her from below as much. Like I feel like you'd see a lot more of like under her chin. I think yeah. Yeah, it just feels like we're seeing her from the front a little bit too much, instead of from below. And it just feels condensed in a strange way, where I feel like we'd see like it would be skewed a lot more, so we'd see a lot more of like the underside of her, if that makes sense. Where here it feels very straight on. And then I'm finding with the background, it again feels very like head on. So like this level where people are fighting, like we're seeing them very much like straight on from the side, whereas considering like their placement in comparison to the queen, like I feel like we'd be seeing from below a lot more. And then this window feels like again, it feels like even though it's very far above, it feels like we're seeing it from straight on. And yeah, and I think another thing that's like working against you with the perspective is that, and this is very difficult because you're working with this rock which has like it's a very organic shape. Like you can tell there are places that have been like carved out into paths and like this window and stuff, but it feels very, and you want to keep that like organic feel. Like it's not a man-made structure. It's not all straight lines. But it's I'm finding the lines here, like the crevices and stuff carved out of the rock, like you could really be using that to show your perspective. You can use those lines. You can keep them organic and have them like kind of curve in different ways and stuff, and show different pieces of the rock face like you have. But I think you need to use them to like create that upward perspective. The same way like a leading line. Well, I mean, that's what they are. They'd be leading lines. The same way, like if you're looking at a skyscraper from below, like all of the lines are kind of like, you know, instead of seeing them straight on like a rectangle, you're seeing them curve upward to a more like triangular shape because of the perspective skew of like looking up at something as it's going into the distance. So I think you could use the like architecture of this cave to your advantage that way. Yeah, I think you really need to push the perspective on the queen. I think because she's like obviously your centerpiece to this, where you really need to like set up her in perspective. I would honestly recommend doing some studies on like 3-point perspective using something like a skyscraper, because it's very simple. Like it's simple to draw, whereas like drawing a person, there's a lot more pieces that complicate things, especially when you're using like a dynamic pose like this. But just doing some practice with just like boxes and skyscrapers and tall buildings will really help you kind of set that foundation for doing something like this, where you're like looking upwards towards something using like a really low horizon line. And from there, when you're building a person, like for the Mushroom Queen, for example, I would break her down into those boxes. Where you know, like each piece of her legs, like each segment of her legs, like her shin and then her thigh could be like a rectangle. And then same with her torso and her head, and her arms, just so that you can put those into perspective. And then from there, you can kind of like extrapolate and play around with posing and stuff. But I think that's like a really good way to I think kind of nail the perspective on this. That makes sense. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, and as for, sorry, so I'll move on from the perspective. And as for her design, yeah, color-wise, I really like what's going on. She's got a very concise color scheme, I guess. Like it's very distinct. There's lots of good contrast going on. That's one thing I really do like about this, is like you've done a really great job with highlighting her face in particular, where you've added like lots of like shadow work and highlights. I really like the mushroom kind of hat thing. I'm not sure if it's a growth or if it's a hat, but this part, because you're using it to kind of like halo her face and really like bring attention to it. So I think contrast wise, you're doing a really great job with that. And for her colors, like I said, there's great contrast between the different parts. It all feels very cohesive. I like how you're using this like light teal to kind of create these ornaments, I guess, like little pop out call outs, like with the lining of her skirt and her belt, and like along the bottom of the mushroom. Like it's just good. It kind of pulls everything together, and adds some nice little flair to everything. I would like to see. So looking at her design, like her costume and stuff, like it feels very cohesive where she's got these like little mushroom decorated like knee and elbow pads and like the shoulders and stuff, and they match like her hat and the shape of her dress and stuff. I think something to maybe put some more detail in would be her boots, especially because like in this particular image we're going to be looking at the boots quite a bit because that's kind of where our eye level is ish. Still, I would recommend bringing in some of these same like teal highlights and adding some more detail down here. Yeah. Ooh. I think I'm hitting the time to actually learn perspective artist stage. I know. It's hard. The struggle is real. Yeah, it definitely helps to just stick everything like onto a grid because it really helps you kind of align when you have so much going on in an illustration. Having that like basis of the perspective grid really, it honestly kind of simplifies things because it shows you where to put everything, so there's no like guesswork there. Here, I'll move on to the second one because I think I can go into the design as well more here. Okay, so as for, though, let me know, Ink, if you have questions about that first one. Okay, so okay. So this one's interesting, like world-wise, where yeah, so it looks like she's going through another like enemy. She's going through another battle. This looks like an enemy's home, possibly. The thing I'm not sure if they're like outdoors or if they're still like, this is still like a cavern world, like everything's held in a cave kind of system. Because I'm seeing these like, because it up above it's like these could be clouds with some like weather coming through, or like a power, like a magical element of some kind like coming down, or this could be like a cave ceiling with like city in a giant cavern. Oh, okay. I think you could make that a little bit more clear by defining some of these shapes here with the color, because it feels very, I'm gonna call them stalactites, but I don't know if that's the correct term. If it's the other one, I don't remember. But anyways, these stalactites, they feel very kind of like stuck on to the ceiling here, where I think they need to be like brought into it more by use of like line and lighting. Because you can use this like, so you have this like lighter purple for your stalactites, right? You could I would go in and add some highlights and kind of connect them to the ceiling more. If you look at like a cave, because like these are formed from like water dripping and like minerals calcifying or whatever, or hardening, like they're not, they don't come down as like icicle cones necessarily. They tend to be like there's a lot of more form and formation at the top of them. Like they start kind of really thick and then really get thin. And they'll have like multiple spikes coming down. Stalactites hang from the ceiling. Okay, thank you. Yeah, they're more attached to the rock. They're like a part of the rock instead of these things that are just like sticking down like an icicle would. Yeah, and they tend to cluster, and or they'll have like a central one and then little ones kind of coming off of it. Like also hanging down, but just like clustered nearby. Depending on like the age of the cavern and stuff, obviously. So yeah, by using some highlights, you could really blend them into the ceiling more, and I think you could use you could go in and add some like highlights here as well, like maybe more highlights toward the front, and then it gets more shadowy as it goes back. Yeah, totally up to you how you want to do that, but I think melding these together more, I think will help kind of establish the setting a bit more clearly. But yeah, but I enjoy the cityscape that you've created. It feels very like Asian inspired, just with like the shaping of the roof. And I really enjoy these like crab pincer creatures, and I like how that's incorporated into some of the roof decoration and stuff. Where it does give like I like how through these illustrations you're kind of introducing that like each of these like factions has like a creature that they've like domesticated, and it's kind of like built into their society. I think that's kind of fun. And I like how you have like citizens trying to put out like the fire behind them, and you have soldiers like coming out from different places and like fighting on the ground and from the balconies and stuff. Yeah, and I think perspective-wise, I think this one works better because the angle that you're showing the queen at and the city around us is more at eye level. So like we're up here, essentially like at her waist is where the horizon would be. And where our camera is. So like that's a good thing to remember when you're working with perspective, is wherever your eye line is, that is where the horizon is. Does that make sense? Okay, not necessarily, but that's a good rule of thumb for when you're setting up your camera angle in your drawing. But anyways, so we get like, because we're kind of right in the middle of her, we see you've done a good job of showing like the perspective of like her legs where they feel very planted, and we're like kind of seeing her feet from above, for example. And then we're seeing her face from like a little bit from below, not a whole lot, but like a little bit, because she is like such a large character. So yeah, and I think you've used the lighting for that really well, or I like how you've kind of carved out her shape with the highlight hitting like the bottom of her face. Yeah, and I enjoy like the use of the fire kind of lighting her cape from the back. Yeah, I think you've done a good job with like having her stand out against the background, and the perspective on her I think really works. I think some of the city, okay, so I think for the most part you've done a good job with like laying it out where it feels very real. It feels like I like how sorry, Bones left, so the bird has to yell. There's lots of detail going on in the background, and lots of like layering of things again, which I think really works. I think though your buildings feel a little bit flat. Where, for example, like this one up close where we're seeing like the balcony with the soldiers coming out, it feels very flat in comparison to these ones in the background that, you know, are further away. We get less detail, where I feel like it needs to have a bit more depth, where we're seeing more of the you know, maybe we're seeing like the top of this little roof here, or the underside of it. We're seeing this balcony kind of built out in a more 3D way. And Yeah, even though we have some things kind of going back that would be above our eye line, we're still seeing like the front of it and not the underside of it. So that's something to keep in mind, that your buildings also need to like adhere to the perspective, where if it's above the horizon line, we're seeing the underside of it generally, depending on like how intense the perspective affects it. And then yeah, down here at the bottom, we're seeing more, we're seeing the top of things. So like down here, there's some interesting perspective stuff going on, where we're seeing like, you know, this flattened roof, which adds some depth, and like discarded pieces of buildings and structures that she's like destroyed, and people running around. So I think this like here adds like quite a bit of depth, but it's contrasting with this very flat like foreground piece. So I think you need to kind of reconcile like the perspective on those. But I do appreciate that you have this like foreground element. I think that does, like, even though I'd like to see more perspective on it, it does create that depth, which I think works really well. Same with like having these little buildings in the background. I think that just creates such like nice depth of field, and it makes it feel like a really big city. Yeah, so as for her design, I really enjoy the addition of the cape. I think it really pulls her design together. Same with like the detail you've added on the boots, like I mentioned in the last one. Yeah, the shape of the cape creates that like dome mushroom shape that seems to be like what she has going on. I'll check the last one, but I think part of it's like blocked because of her pose, but like I really enjoy like the layering on like her bodice of her dress and like the cape and stuff. Like I think that just adds like some nice little detail. I've noticed, like, just from what I've seen of your designs, I notice a lot of kind of like form-fitting clothing, and I do like seeing more like overlap and depth on the clothing here. I think that works really well. You want to do more with the hammer, but you're satisfied? Yeah, I think the hammer could have some more embellishments that make it feel like hers. That could be like adding more ornaments to the like the shaft of the hammer. It could be I don't know, changing the shape of the hammer so it, you know, you could have it's two these mushroom pieces kind of like standing on either end. It could be carving into it. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff you could do with it to kind of make it more like her weapon. Yeah, I think that would be it. Anatomy-wise, things are looking pretty good. Yeah, I think it's just perspective that is like kind of throwing things off, but you're definitely going in like the right direction. Do you have any other questions about this one, Ink? That is true. You could do some cool atmospheric stuff, like depending on how big this cavern is. It looks pretty big considering there's like a giant woman and a city. That hits the points? Okay, awesome. I don't have a term than atmospheric haze. What is it? Atmospheric perspective, I think, is the term, where I mean, I'm not sure how it would work here because you don't have the light of the sun hitting, but if
drawing giant women.
That's true. Ink loves a giant woman.
I'm not judging.
No, we're not judging. We're just pointing out a fact.
Every time I look at you reviewing Ink's art, it's a giant woman.
What's wrong with a giant woman?
Nothing. I'm just making an observation.
Okay.
Non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental. Yeah, atmospheric perspective, at least when it's in open air, as things go back, they tend to get less saturated and bluer. Anyways. Okay, I'll go on to the last one.
You left.
Look at this cutie.
It's mad at the spot now.
Sorry, Serena. Hi, Weena. Come here, Weena. Come here. Oh. Oh, can't quite make it. Hold on. Hold on. We have a wait, come on. Come here. Come here, sweetheart. Come no. No. It's all falling apart. What? Come here. Nope.
Stop. You are not.
No.
Stop.
What has happened? Well, never mind. No detour. The dogs are causing trouble. No hanging out. Only trouble. Was gonna call me out if I have one more tall buff woman. Oh, hello. Hello, honey.
I don't know how she's doing that. I'm not carrying.
No, she's levitating. I saw it with my own eyes. Boom's chaos in the background. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. But yes, this is a good puppy, unlike our puppies, who are silly. Okay. Okay, what vibes does this creature give off? Cute bubby.
Bubby.
This is a bubby made of clouds.
Snow bubby.
Yes, snow and clouds. Good bubby.
Cold bubby.
Cold bubby. But warm heart, you know?
No, would melt.
Okay,
Christmas heart.
Christmas heart, yes.
Okay, sorry.
Gosh bones, shush. Any feedback on making the design cuter? I'm going for a cute fluffy friend, but not cartoonishly cute. An aerial mount the size of a moose. Oh, I love it. Okay. Keep Bubby refrigerated, exactly. In the freezer. With like a little like bed made of snow. Okay.
Where is my bubbies? Oh my god, they're all being bad.
Bubbies, stop being bad.
Matica, where the frick are you?
Bubbies.
Matica!
They're gone. They're off to eat crumbs somewhere.
Goobert,
Come
Goobert,
here.
Goobert, over here.
Go, Bert, go.
No, not fatal.
There. Okay. Peace has been restored to the household. How do we submit our art for criticism? So there should be a link to our Patreon down below. So we get all our submissions from our Patreon supporters a month in advance, just so we have time to like review things and put our thoughts together. So if you can't get into this stream, but if you'd like to get your stuff looked at for next stream, you can sign up there, and all the information you need will be there. Yeah. Okay. So for making the design cuter, so I think you got a good. I guess my question would be like, what are you finding that isn't cute? Cause like just from like how round the design is, and like the eyes are very friendly. I love the cute little nose, the little like three mouth that's going on is very cute. Yeah, I'm curious about what you're finding lacking in the cute department. If you did want to go cuter, you could always go for like, I don't know, a larger head. You could add more fluff around the sides of the face. I'm not sure anything in particular. I'm going for semi-realistic style because I think this looks like a pretty cute dog, especially in the face area. The only thing I would be careful about, so I'm noticing with the arms in particular, they feel a little disjointed. It's hard to tell from the perspective, but I think what's happening is like the limbs are very long. Well, I mean, which is kind of moose-like, but I think you're going for more puppy proportion than moose proportion. But the torso feels very squat in comparison to like how skinny and long the limbs appear in this pose. Whereas like, because here would be, oh sorry, you can't see my cursor. Here would be like the chest area, but you're missing kind of like the stomach area here, so it would be like a little bit longer. It'd be like a little bit more curved from how the dog is jumping. Dog anatomy has come for me. I know, it's really different because, like, if you're used to drawing people, it can be very difficult to figure out, like, the placement of the shoulders on dogs, for example. I find the hind legs are a bit easier, but yeah, I find the front legs difficult to place. Yeah, so I think they'd take up a bit more space kind of on either side of the torso. They kind of like, because if you look at a dog torso, like it's very, the rib cage is kind of pointed at the bottom, so there's more room for the legs on either side. Where this feels very much like human shoulders, where we have like, I don't know, because our arms are like on, like they have more movement than a dog, because a dog is like, oh my god, I'm sorry, I keep hitting the mic. Their legs are more forward like that. So they have, it kind of covers more of the side of their torso. So that's all. Drawing simple dogs is fine. I've never tried super realistic doggos. It helps. It helps when you're doing the stylized doggos. Yeah, I would recommend to look at some of the skeletons. That can really help, because I find, because when I was really trying to figure out how to draw animals and stuff, it can be difficult to look at, like, you know, a fluffy dog and try to see like the musculature underneath, where it just kind of gets lost in the fur. So yeah, I'd recommend looking at skeletons, and like anatomical drawings where you can see like the muscles. For a dog in particular, it's pretty easy. There's lots of like veterinary references you can look at. Yeah. Finally on break, ready whenever. Okay, so we'll look at yours next. Yeah. So I think all you really need to do is just kind of like fix up the torso and the limbs, but cuteness wise, I think this is really great. I love like the fluffiness. I love like the little wisps that are coming off. There's some great shape going on. Like, as much as like I'm ragging on you for like the torso needing to be longer, I like the roundness of it all. It's really cute. But yeah, I think what could help you is maybe like rounding out the paws. They feel very like, they feel long and kind of rectangular at the end. You could do something to like round them out a little bit more. And then yeah, making the head bigger is typically like a how to make something look like younger and cuter type thing. But yeah, otherwise I think you did a really good job. Are there any questions, Ink? Makes sense. Awesome. Okay. Cool. So we will look at the pigment. I can't believe I forgot to submit. It's okay. It's weird. It's everything was weird because of the holidays. Because like this month we're gonna have two stream sets. There's gonna be another one at the end of January, so which I should probably put the submission dates up for so people have time to submit. But yeah, things are off because of the holidays. All right, pigment. Let's see. Okay, so you got 2 pages and a character design. Right. Okay, so yeah, last month you submitted a night scene and you were looking at kind of like color stuff, if I recall. It's for the second page, another general critique, looking for your opinion on the lighting effects around the planet. And then the third one is the character design. Okay. Merry holidays. Yes, you too. Okay, so as for the lighting, okay, so the thing that jumps out to me first is there's places where I think the contrast could be higher. I'm sorry, I'm jumping into like the crits before I talk about like the good things. But okay, I'll go into it. So I think, okay, so what I should say here is that I think lighting-wise, couldn't get much done. It was a hectic month. I feel you. I feel you. December is a difficult month. It's good, okay. Anyways, so I think the color choices you've made work really well for the night scene. Like, even in these, like, call-outs, it feels like it is nighttime because the shadows are very cool. Even on the colors that have, like a warmer base, like especially like the oranges and like the warmth on her skin and stuff. It still feels like it's lit at night. I like the directionalness of the lighting that you're using because they're standing underneath this like hazy light. I like how it's very clearly everything is lit from above. Like the lighting is very consistent across all of the panels. And the particular colors you've chosen, again, feel like they're set at night. But I think where you're probably going to run into some issues is that I'm noticing it particularly in this first panel. With the friend speaking, where there's a lot of like kind of dark mid-tone going on here, where like the flowers she's holding are blending in a lot with the background. Let me see if I can close up a little bit. Yeah, where the flowers are blending in with the background because they're very close in value. And then same with like the gray of the jacket and the gray of the asphalt. Where I think it's just like it's not quite the same, but it's blending together. It's just a little bit too close. Yeah, you can lighten up this background, for example. You could also use a gradient if you wanted to like mimic the street light. So that maybe like you could have it kind of light across here and then maybe like a little bit darker behind her head, for example, to kind of mimic how the light is kind of like triangular across her there, if that makes sense. But yeah, if I were you, I would also darken up the asphalt and boost the highlights on her. It's difficult in night scenes because you want to ensure that like it seems dark but everything is still visible. So I'd recommend just kind of like boosting your highlights and darkening things where you can. So for example, like the asphalt of the road, you could darken. You could darken some of these buildings because they're not integral to, like, you know, you want to have a good sense of them because it sets the setting. But like you could darken a lot of these because they're not super vital information for where they are. Yeah, and you could lighten some aspects like if everything else is darkened, you could lighten up her the gray of the jacket and still have it come through as gray. Yeah, let me see. I really like the expressions on this page, by the way. They're very, like, lively. There's something about, like, Nyx's face, like, facing away, where I really like how you've, like, oh my gosh, I'm losing where I am. I really like how you've, just, like, the perspective on, like, the nose and still seeing, like, the eyelashes, as 3D. I think you've done, like, a really good job at showing this, like, angle. And yeah, and there's just like lots of vibrancy in the posing and the expressions. Yeah, I think you could also get away with like possibly making this panel bigger. I feel bad for not like pointing this out because I think you've shown me this in like the sketching phase. But it feels like there's lots of empty space kind of down here now seeing it colored. So you could probably get away with like boosting this panel and making it a little bit larger. Kind of filling in a bit more space over here. If that makes sense? You don't have to, but just something to think about. It might help too once the pavement is like a bit darker. It might help kind of like fill that space in because it feels a little bit kind of gray, and if it's black, it might be easier to like to have these call out panels pop a bit more. But yeah, yeah, the perspective looks great. The background looks really solid. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be my advice, is just the contrast. Just messing around with like the levels of your contrast here, I think will go a long way. Yeah. Do you have any other questions about this? I think that's it. Okay, there's one last thing I think I should probably point out, is especially for these call out panels where you're getting a close up on a character's face, you're doing it a little bit where I noticed there's like a little bit of highlight on her cheeks and across her nose bridge. But don't be afraid to like highlight the character's faces more, if that makes sense. I'm finding just with her design in particular, because she has like this like framing of hair, and in this lighting you have like the direct lighting on top, so as it goes down it gets darker, and it gets very dark kind of around her neck area. I think you just need to add in like a little bit more highlight on her face just to help her expression come through. Yeah, so just something to think about. And again, it might help just when you change the contrast levels. So we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so yeah, you were looking again at like general critique and how the effects are looking around the planet. So from a compositional perspective, this works really well. I may have blended it a bit too much. Yeah, I think if you just keep like a little bit of sharpness on the highlight, yeah, I think that'll help. Anyways, compositionally, this works really, really well. I love all your leading lines from this like magic effect of her doing the, you know, splitting humanity in two with her staff. But yeah, it creates these lovely leading lines to the center, which leads you to the earth and looking at the goddess. Yeah, it creates just a nice, balanced composition. I also really enjoy how you're using the like space dust clouds to like frame her. I know part of it is like her hair that leads into it, but yeah, I really like how you have this kind of like dark space behind, so like you can see the shape of her hair, and I like how you have these like tendrils showing through that really just add to that, like bringing your eye to the center of the page. The lighting effects are very experimental. It's fun playing around with them. I think you did a really good job. Like they play into the composition, they don't distract from it. Yeah, and I really like how they get more dense the closer it is. They're very like subtle and effective. Yeah, and just the way you have shaded everything also really adds to it, where you've got great contrast with like the gold lighting beneath, and then because like her color palette is very purple, like it creates just nice contrast. And I like how you've used like a more desaturated yellow, like it's still bright but it's not as saturated, and then it goes to this like really dark saturated purple. And I really like the way you've blended things here, where it just it makes things feel very like voluminous, that you've got just these like really nice dark lines that like have a soft gradient out. It just creates like a really nice lighting effect. It makes everything feel very solid. Yeah, yeah, just really, really solid with the lighting and color choices and composition. The one thing... Sorry, I also really like the coloring on the like the cracks she's creating with the magic, where yeah, just really great use of color and like gradienting, and it's all really interesting. I wanted it to look like the impact blew her hair away. Yeah, totally. But the one thing I would watch out for is the color of the earth. It's very... Well, I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. I feel like it... I feel like there's a bit of a contrast issue with it, and it might be like a color issue as well, where it's a little bit too... I think it's a bit... It's hard, okay, because I like how the cracks from the magic stand out on it. I think possibly it could go darker. Like the world could be dark and then you keep the same value for the cracks. Making the cracks down on the green was a struggle. I know, because like I'm worried if you push it darker, it could blend in too much with like the spacey background. But maybe that's not bad. Maybe that kind of helps highlight the magic if this is a lot darker behind it. So that's something to consider. I know, because I'm not sure how much brighter you could get with the cracks. So yeah, it might be best to like make it darker. You could also pull a bit more blue and purple into the green. Yeah, give it a try. I'm personally on the fence with it. You could also use a bit more of like radial shading on the earth, like keep it bright like it is up at the top where the scepter is like meeting the earth. And then you could have it get to like a really dark shadow kind of like down here. And have it kind of radiate out, if that makes sense. You know, like if you have a light just hitting a circle. Yeah. Play around with that, because you could have like it's well lit up top and then it gets super dark at the bottom, but you'll have to see if you like it. Yeah, and I think pulling it towards like teal or blue or purple a little bit more, like not so far that you lose the green in it, but just a little bit, I think would also help with like making it feel like it's part of the illustration a little bit more, because I think just the like it's not a super yellow green, but I think it's just like a little too yellow green that it's like throwing it off a little bit for me. But yeah, otherwise this looks fantastic. I love the shading. I love the composition. I love the magic effects. They're just so good. I also really love, I want to highlight like the little fur here. Just the way you've textured it and the shadows. It's just so good. Yeah. Yeah, play around with it. See what you like. Did you have any other questions on that one? Do I think her hands are too big? Possibly. I think the top hand is a little too large. truthfully. I think perspective-wise, I think it's fine because you've got some foreshadowing, foreshortening happening, where obviously like her arms are like stretched out in front of her, so like having them a bit larger is fine. But I think the top one is just like slightly too large or tall, possibly compared to the one below it. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just this top one is a little bit too tall, so if you like squished it down a little bit, like just a smidge, like 5% or 10% or something, I think that would fix it. I totally understand not wanting to redo everything. Yeah, I don't even think it's that noticeable. It's probably one of those things that like you as the artist notice, but like other people probably wouldn't. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the last one. So that don't have to worry about your break ending. Okay. So this is a character named Zuharia. She's going to be the first main villain in my D&D group. Heck yeah. She's based on the crystal globular prenite? Her weapon is planned on going to one of the players after defeating her. Oh, cool. So critique for her general vibes, colors used in anatomy. Okay, awesome. Okay. So, first off, I want to say I love the pose. It's very striking. They look like little grapes. Oh, I love that. But anyways, the posing here, so dynamic. I love there's like a kind of like an X shape to her pose, which is just like awesome. Just so dynamic, adds so much movement. Yeah, I really like too how the posing highlights the weapon, which will be like you know, she'll be important as a villain, but like highlighting the weapon that's like gonna go to your players is like really cool. But yeah, just the different angles in the posing. There's this nice like movement through line following like her leg up to her arm. I love the movement of like the clothing where it like curls around. Yeah, just really, really great. And her expression is awesome. It's so cool. Where like the vibes I'm getting are like you know those characters that are just like excited to fight and they're very like menacing and like hoo hoo. Like that's the vibe I get. She's like, I'm gonna kick your butt and it's gonna be fun. Matching her color palette to the character was fun as well. Yeah, I think you did a good job with that as well. There's some great contrast going on between like the different layers of clothing. I really like the segmented joints as well. That's very cool. Like when I first saw it, I assumed she was like made of like a plant character. I mean, partly because of the rose motif with the weapon and the design stuff. Because I thought these like little like her hair and the joints and stuff. I assumed that was like a cottony, not cotton, but like dandelion fluff, kind of like a really fluffy flower or something. And I assume that like the texture you have going on the arms and stuff was like wood, but I can see that it's more stone and then the special crystal you were talking about. So that's really cool. I like it. And I also really love the texture that you did. Like I like these like cracks and they're not cracks, but like it like highlights her musculature, but it looks like the way stone has like little ripples and lines and stuff. It's very cool. It's a very cool effect. I love her hair too. It's so cute. Um, I think the only advice I would give you, I would lighten up the background a little bit. You've got some really great contrast going on the weapon and the character, but I think the background's a little bit too mid-tone, and if you lighten it up just a smidge, I think it'll really help make like the weapon pop, because you've got these like nice dark vines and like the black highlights. You got like her dark skin that I think will really pop against like a slightly lighter background. I think the colors are working really well. Like there's this good kind of like balance between these more kind of like foresty blue greens and then these like lime yellowy greens. So I think you're on the right track with the background being desaturated, but I think it needs to be lighter. I made it dark to show the glow from the roses. Yeah. It's a hard balance. I think anatomy-wise, the only thing... So, like I said, the pose is very dynamic. I find the arms very solid, especially. I'm finding the alignment of the torso and the hips feels a little bit off, where I think the hips would be further back, just because she's, like, leaned forward. Or she looks a little bit off kilter the way she is, like, posed. So I think if her hips are like a little bit further back, so like her torso would probably cover like a little bit more of her thigh area, and would probably move back a little bit. I think a lot of it would be like overlapped. I don't think like her hips would be like back here. It would be more kind of like behind her torso, if that makes sense. And I think that would help make it feel a little bit more solid and a little less like her back is like super curved. Because I imagine if you're standing like this, like she's leaned forward and like her body is twisted, but it's not like curved, if that makes sense. Like the back would probably be pretty straight. So yeah, so I think just moving the hips a little bit would help with that. Figuring out the hip placement is tricky. It is. When you have like overlap like this for a dynamic pose, it can be difficult. But yeah, I think that's I think that's the only thing I'd really change, because this looks great. Did you have any other questions about it? Anything you were wondering? Thank you so much. That's all awesome. Well, thanks for submitting. All right, Fitz, I think you wanted to go next. Okay. So... Okay, so the first one is some designs based off some trinkets you found online. Oh, those are so pretty. The lady in green is named Beryl. Very good. She's a noblewoman. Man next to her is Sterling, her butler and bodyguard. Love it. So general design and anatomy feedback. Okay. All right. Okay. So... First off, I think you captured the shapes of these like trinkets that you found. Like I love the kind of like leaf pattern that you've pulled from this one up here. Sorry, you can't see my cursor. This one up here. And really pulled it into like the shape of her skirt. It's also like in the shape of her dress as well, like the bodice, and like the curve of her shawl and stuff. I think that's really nice. Same with the use of the colors. I like how you've added like a gradient to kind of match the gradient here. And then with this fella, I like how you really leaned into like the triangular shape of this. And yeah, and I like how you've really matched the kind of ornament on it, where you've got these little like swirls and stuff. Of like kind of like a gold ambery color on top of the dark, and then you still have this kind of like white swath down the middle using his suit and his shirt. And I think that's really cool. Yeah, color-wise, I think these are great. There's good contrast. It matches the source material really well. They all mesh really well together. I think so. I think like pose-wise, there's some good stuff going on for like characterization, where like with her hand like placed under her chin and she's holding like a pipe, like she feels very like she feels like a noblewoman. She's very like refined, almost like like a femme fatale kind of. I think just the use of the pipe like just reminds me of like a 1930s villainess from like an old movie or something. And then he looks very like friendly and open. I think just like with his what is it? Not body form. What is it? Body type? Body type? Is that it? Is that the word? Yeah, he looks like a fighter. Yeah. Pardon me. Yeah, I think there's some minor anatomy things. So for the butler, I find his head is a little bit large. I'm actually not sure because like his hands and his legs are very like proportional to his head, but I find his torso is a little bit short. And then for the lady, I'm noticing the way she's posed, she feels a little unstable. It could just because of like the shape of her dress, but she feels like she's like leaning back a little too far, where like it feels like her chest is not aligned with like her hips, if that makes sense. Like if you put a straight line, like she's kind of off. So like her stance doesn't feel very sturdy. And I'm finding this arm, the one holding the pipe, feels a little like the forearm feels a little bit short. Oh, her one leg is up and back, but you don't see. Yeah, okay. So I think it's just being disguised by the dress in that case. Oh yeah, her other foot would probably be here, right? Okay, so that makes more sense then. But yeah, other than that, it's looking good. Did you have any other questions on this one? She's had 3 husbands who all passed suddenly due to unfortunate accidents. Yes, yes. They all succumbed to food poisoning, strangely. How do the faces look? Let me see. So I find their faces are very nice. Like I like how, even though like the way she's dressed and stuff is very like femme fatale, like I was saying, she has like a very soft kind of look to her face. I think it's just in like she has very like soft eyes. She has this like little soft smile. Yeah, I think the faces are like well proportioned. And yeah, well proportioned, good expression. Same with this guy. Yeah, his face is well proportioned and I think it's aligned well. The only thing that feels a little bit off of alignment is his hairline. Where his bangs feel like they should be very symmetrical, but just based on how his face is pointed, like this side that's closer to the camera feels like it's pushed to this like out of his face a little bit farther, where like I feel like it would fall across here a bit more. That's like a really minor thing. But yeah, other than that, well proportioned, good expressions. Yeah. Is that everything? I had the thought there was something off with his face. Yeah, I think it's just the hairline, because everything else lines up well. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So I'll do the next one. So next is an illustration of a character from a story idea. Her name is Primrose. She's the queen of a very fantastical kingdom that the 2 main characters find themselves in. I'd like feedback on the coloring and shading and composition, as well as pose and anatomy. I really like the pose. It's very... Yeah, it's very dynamic. It's got a lot of great structure to it. It feels like it gives a lot of character to it. She looks very, like, cunning, if that makes sense. She looks calculating. Yeah, she looks like she's, like, sitting back and, like, evaluating someone, like, trying to figure out what their next move is. Just from, like, the expression, like, the head rested on the hand feels very, like, analytical. But the pose is also still very, like, feminine. Color-wise, there's something very, like, lustrous to the way you've done, like, the hair and the shine on the dress. As well as it looks like she's wearing, not leggings, like stockings. Where I like how you've added, like, a little bit of, like, green and gray in there which is very different from, like, the warmth of, like, her skin, so it looks like she's wearing, tights. But yeah, but just the way you shaded the hair with, like, this really shiny gradient, it gives it this very, like, glossy feel, which is really nice. And I like the high contrast in it as well, where the shadows are, like, very dark and then you get these very saturated highlights with lots of nice little detail on, like, the locks of hair. So I think that is a very nice touch. And I also like how the dress feels very shiny. Like it looks like it's made of like a silky kind of material as well. And I think you've done a really great job with adding a lot of volume to like her face and her shoulders. For example, it's in the hair as well, where you've done a very good mix of these like subtle, soft highlights and then these really pronounced like dark shadows. Yeah, and then yeah, just lots of nice little glossy details on like the crown. Like I like how you have these like little shiny cutouts to make it look metal, whereas like on the fabric it's a lot more soft. The only thing I would say is that the white of her clothing, so like the gloves and the ribbon, they feel a little bit like they're colored a little bit more, like it's more sharp than the rest. There's a lot more softness going on through like the other fabric, for example. And I think it's hard because I like that you're using these really dark shadows on the white. It creates a good contrast, but I think just with how sharp you've done the shading, it makes it feels like if it was softened up here and there, it would fit in with the aesthetic a bit more. Yeah, like I feel like the contrast is there. It just needs to be like softened out, like the highlights on like the hair and the face, for example. Yeah. But I'd keep these like dark shadows on the white as much as possible. And I really like how you shaded the white with using the bluey green. Creates like a lot of nice contrast and yeah, just really, really nice use. It really helps make things stand out. I should have used a soft eraser on the edges of the shading. Yeah, I think that would really help with kind of keeping it all cohesive with the rest of the shading. The only other thing I would say is that so it's a hard balance. I'm not exactly sure what you'd want to do, but I think you've got so much high contrast with the white on the clothing because like she's got very dark hair, she's got very like dark skin with like the stockings, and like the dress just because it has red is also very dark. Like without losing the, and she also has like this very kind of like menacing expression, like without losing that, without losing like the color of her skin and her hair, I wonder if there's some way you could bring that high contrast like to her face somehow. I'm not exactly sure if that would mean like adding in another layer of like light highlight on the hair, or bringing in some shine to her eye, or some sort of highlight just around here, because it's very dark right here. And then you have these like high contrast white pieces. You could even do it by like bringing in the gold somewhere, like a hair clip, or bringing gold into her eyes. I'm not exactly sure. But just something, even like having a bit more white visible in her eyes to kind of like bring your attention there. Light behind her too could add contrast. That could also work if you have some, yeah, some like edge lighting here and there. Yeah, just something to bring the attention right to her face. But otherwise, yeah, this looks great. Very dynamic. Love the shading and the color choices. Yeah. Did you have any other questions on this one? All good? I'll move on to the next one. If you have questions, I can go back. Okay. Finally I have a lineup of characters from the same story concept. On the left, there's Primrose, Felicity, Alistair, and Ivan. Felicity and Alistair are the main characters, so I wanted them to look more cohesive. in terms of color palettes. Ivan is the captain of the Royal Guard and Alistair's romantic interest. Hell yeah. Oh, how's the composition? I feel like the ribbon is a bit stiff. Compositionally, I think it works really well. Yeah, you could add a bit of curve to the ribbon to kind of like mimic her hair. Hold on, sorry. So what you could do with the ribbon is instead of having it go straight down, you could have it kind of curve up, even like kind of crossing with her leg here to kind of bring the eye into kind of like a C curve, so you come back up to the face. I think that could possibly strengthen the composition. Yeah, I think if you did change anything, that could work, or even bringing in some kind of like background element to do that. Like instead of using this like square ornament, you could do like a circle or like a crescent moon kind of thing. I feel like her leg is touching the ribbon. Oh, I can see that. There is a little bit of an optical illusion where it looks like her foot is like the ribbon's like tucked against the bottom of her foot. I think it's just because like it's just like a little optical illusion. We're having a bit more overlap, probably like having the end of the shoe come over the end of the ribbon. You probably have to move the ribbon over more. A tangent, that's the word, yes. Yeah. Because compositionally, like, she's sitting on a focal point. Words just escape me every day of my life. But yeah, she's on a focal point. Her face is like well framed. There's good movement and stuff. Yeah, I think just having something to kind of like bring you back up from the bottom of the composition would help. And there's tons of ways you could do that. But otherwise, yeah, super well balanced. Really good looking. Yeet. Makes sense. That's good for that one? Okay, awesome. All right. So, right. So the two in the middle are the main characters. This is love interest, Captain of the Guard. We have the wait, is she a princess? Am I misremembering? She's the queen. Sorry, my bad. No disrespect, queen. Okay, general feedback on how cohesive they look, and also if they look distinct in their silhouettes, faces, body types, and general design thoughts. No need to go in depth. Okay, awesome. Okay, so looking at like all of the characters together, the main characters in the middle, Felicity and Alistair, they feel very different from Ivan and Primrose, where Ivan and Primrose feel very fantasy, and Felicity and Alistair feel very modern. I'm like, is this like a isekai type thing? Like they go to a fantasy world from our world? But yeah, but it... Yeah, just because Felicity has like a very modern like tennis skirt. She's wearing like a varsity type jacket. Is a little isekai-esque. Is there a different word than isekai for that? I feel like, what did we call it before isekai was a thing? Where someone goes to a different world. Anyways. No, there wasn't anything. I know, I'm like, Because, like, I remember watching, like, Inuyasha as a kid. What do we call that? Anyways, so yeah, so he's wearing, like, so Alistair's wearing, you know, like a modern tie and jacket. They honestly look kind of like school uniforms. Felicity's a bit more where, Alistair, he could just be wearing, like, a nice suit. Fantasy, I know, like, yeah, I guess. Because there's, like, urban fantasy, which I've heard of before, but that's not the same as, like, someone from our world going to a different world. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways. It's just in a suit. He's a businessman. I love it. We love a businessman. Like an ethical businessman. Anyways, yeah. Yes, whereas Ivan looks very, like, Japanese inspired in his attire. Just from, like, the kind of pants he's wearing, the silhouette and, like, cut of his jacket. Yeah. And then Primrose looks very much like fantasy queen, with, like, a very cutesy twist to it. Yeah, I think Felicity and Alistair, they have similar kind of, I mean, obviously their colors are very similar. They both have this, like, icy blue kind of aesthetic going through. But yeah, they definitely feel like they are part of, like, a team or a region. And then Primrose and Ivan feel, color-wise, they're similar just because they both have that red through line. But style-wise, they feel different, and I think that's just because Primrose has a very, like, European princessy look. And like I said, Ivan has a more kind of, like, Asian-inspired look. Yeah. And I do enjoy that there is the color through line between Ivan and Alistair, where they both have the blue going on. Alice in Wonderland? I can see that. I think it's because of Primrose. She has a very, like, Queen of Hearts look to her. I mean, she literally has, like, heart motif through her design. And they're loosely inspired by that. I love it. I'm glad that shows through. Queen of Hearts, the rabbit. Alistair. Oh, I love it. And the Mad Hatter. Very good. Very good. Oh, that's cute. Her ribbon is like her headband is like the rabbit. Oh, that's cute. I like it. Oh yeah, and he has a bit of, like, just with his collar, it's a bit of, like, a top hat shape. Oh, that's nice. That's a nice little tip, little nod to your inspiration. That's cute. I like it. At least I think. Unless I misread that. Maybe Kuroe and I are just getting lost in the sauce. Ivan is more Cheshire Cat. Dang it! Okay, I can see that with his little smile. He's usually surrounded by cats. Oh, I love it. I'm in love. Give me a sweet man with cats. I'm here for it. All right. Is there anything with this that I didn't cover? Any questions you had? When shot looks away and back there's more cats. I love it. 10 more cats every time. It's like our house. The Cheshire Cat and Mad Hatter are siblings in my head. Love it. How do their personalities read? Yeah, so I think Primrose... So I got the vibe from her that she's very calculating from the last image, but here she looks a lot more like playful and childish. Felicity feels very naive. She feels, just from this, she feels kind of like innocent and ditzy, just from her expression and pose. Alistair feels more serious and down to earth, just based off his like expression. And then Ivan, my impression is a little colored because I know he's like Cheshire Cat inspired. But he does look playful. He looks like that kind of like quiet, gentle, like teacher type. Not specifically a teacher, but you know, that kind of like guiding mentor kind of character who's like a little cheeky. That's the vibe I get. She'll be too busy playing with Ivan's cats. A mix of calculating and childish. Felicity's very airheaded. Love it. We love a ditzy lady. We stan. The other two make sense as well. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So, let me know if you have other questions, Fitz. I can't remember who wanted to go next. Because we have Kuroe, Kladd, and LesBean. Thank you for the critique. No problem. Thanks for submitting. Pardon me. Because I know all of you are here. Somewhere. And I can't remember the order we picked, because I think you were all pretty laid back about it. Stop making headcanons for Fitz's OCs. It's just giving you fodder for fanfic in the future, you know? Woo. Alright, Kuroe. I'm voluntelling you. Okay, so we'll do Kuroe, and then LesBean, and then Kladd. Alright, so, Kuroe, my friend. First career piece is Banana Cut promo art. So I think, yeah, you showed these characters last stream. If no one else is here. I know, they were here earlier. Where are you guys? But yeah, you showed me these characters before. It's like the basketball team and big lesbian energy. Okay, so just this first one. Crit on the layout, general anatomy, and color. Okay, so you have some good contrast going on through this, especially from the background. It's very like bright and light, and then all of the characters you're using like darker colors. You get a lot of good contrast through like the green and the yellow, which I think is great. I think you also have a lot of good like storytelling going on through this as well, just from what I remember of the characters, because you have these like the two sisters. Pardon me. The two sisters, and then who I think are the protagonists. I know that this lady here is the love interest. So I like how she's highlighted. I know she has like a bit of an antagonist vibe as well. Like there's some rivalry or something. And I like how you're showing off like the rest of the team as well in this more like, you know, playful aside over here. Like they're still important characters, but like these three are the mains. I'm already changing the words to yellow. Oh, I see. The words on the jacket? Yeah. Or the shirts. Yeah, I think that would work. I didn't even see these. So, the seahorses. So yeah, if you change that to yellow, I think that will appear much better. Hum. But yeah, I think you get a good sense of their personalities from this. And compositionally, I think it works really well. I like how your two mains are like popping out of the frame and everyone else is like in the background. I like how you're using this side to like frame the love interest girl. And I like how you have like all this dynamic movement like filling out this side as well with these characters. It's got good balance where it's not like split down the middle. It's like offset to the side a little bit. That works really well. If I were you, so I really enjoy the typography. I think you framed it really well. Because like if this is a cover spread, I think it'll fit on like the cover page really well. If I were you, I'm not sure, unless you're planning to put like a volume number or like a subtitle here, I might move the cut over to the left a little bit just so that it's like a little bit more aligned in the middle. It just feels like there's a little bit too much empty space right here, but it might look different if I'm seeing like it just as the cover and not like the full spread. So just something to, oh, it's poster art, it's not a cover. Okay, I was imagining as like a cover wrap for a book because I think it would work well for that. But yeah, I might move the cut over a little bit just to fill in that space. Yeah, I really like how you've used some like lighter color and effect behind the characters to kind of frame them out a little bit more. That's like a really nice touch contrast-wise. I'd be careful in the group of characters. Some of them are getting a little bit lost between them. Like it's mostly where like the green of the uniform overlaps. Like these two characters here, I think it's like 2 and 4. They're yeah, they just kind of like mesh together at the middle here just because like it's so dark. You just need some highlights in here to really differentiate them, and I think you'd be fine. And yeah, and just be mindful of that throughout, but I think that's the only place I can really see it. Anatomy wise, I think overall you've done a good job. This character, her one finger that's like spinning the ball is very large compared to the rest of her hands, so I might shrink that down and bring the ball down a little bit with it. I think I'd also be careful. The taller sister, her hands feel a little bit large. Like I know she's a more muscular character, but just her hands with the basketball feel like a little bit too large. But otherwise, I think anatomy-wise, you've done a really good job here, where they all feel very like proportional to one another. I gave up on his after Alice's. You did a good job with hers. I think they look fine. They just need like some little size adjustments. But like position and pose wise, they look great. Yeah. Otherwise, this looks great. It's so dynamic. Yeah. Did you have any other questions about it? That's great. Awesome. So the next one is the logo and promo art. I'm not sure if you want to add a banana to it. Am I missing something? I feel like there's one missing because you mentioned a second, but I only see the Mackie roll one. Yeah, I don't see it. Maybe it didn't upload? Oh, sorry. You want me to just look at the logo? My bad. Okay, sorry. So just looking at the logo for this. I forgot to save it as its own thing. Okay, that's totally fine. Yeah, so looking specifically at the logo. So yeah, I think it works really well. It feels very sporty. You got good contrast with the yellow and then the brown outline. I do really like these lines going through it. I think... So yeah, I like the lines going through it. Again, it gives this very, like, energetic, sporty vibe. I wonder, though, if there's some places where you may want to... I'm not sure where you would do it, but I feel like maybe you might want to, like, fill in the brown and just have the white go across the yellow letters, or the opposite, like you have the yellow letters stay like they have no white line going through it, but there's white going through the brown outline. Play around with it. I'm not sure which one would look better. I think if the white is just on the yellow lettering, it gives it this kind of like shiny look, which could be interesting. And if you do that, I'd move this like top white line on banana down so that it's on the lettering. But yeah, play around with that. And if you're looking to add a banana, I think adding like a cute banana would be fine. Like if you did, I would put it here. Obviously where there's like this space beside cut. And you could either have it kind of like connecting the two or facing away, so it's like fitting in this crevice. I'm not really sure. Could also have it going behind, possibly. There's definitely like a tons of ways you could incorporate it in. Did you have something in mind for like adding the banana in? Banana shaped like the sea. That could work. That could work. Making it very curved like that. Weird me. Connecting the B and C like you said? Yeah, that could work. I think so. Add some visual interest. Or the A and the T. Oh, gotcha. I don't know. I'd have to see it because if you had it like behind the A and the T at the end, it could possibly feel too heavy at this end because it would be very like right side heavy. Or putting it here, it might feel more balanced, but like a logo doesn't have to be symmetrical to be good. I feel like I'd have to see it. I don't know if I could give you a definitive answer for that without seeing it. I know what this one's crit's gonna be. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Do you have any other questions about it? Anything I didn't cover? No, thank you. Okay. Awesome. All right. So, it's chapter 10 for Mackie Roll. Both color and grayscale for comparison. No idea what to do for the background. Yeah, I think you've done a very good like translation to the black and white from the color version. I also think the background works really well. It frames everything in very nicely. It has really good contrast on the black and white version as well. But yeah, it frames the characters well. There's a bit of a through line with the vertical lines from like the frame in the back, as well as like the lines on their shirts. So I think that could work. Yeah, unless you have maybe like a plot specific element that you could put in. I don't know what's involved in this chapter, but if you had something like that, that could work as well if you don't want to do like an abstract background like this. Yeah, because it could be like an important object or set piece from the chapter. It could be thematically something that fits the chapter. If you are going to stick with the rectangle, though, I'm not drawing another stadium. Totally fair. I don't know if there's maybe like a piece of equipment that's important, like because I know this is like gymnastic stuff, right? I don't know the names of anything, but you know, if it's like a piece of equipment that he's gonna use in the thing, you could maybe use that. I don't think it's necessary, but totally up to you. If you do stick with these rectangles, though, one thing to point out, the emergency reserve subtitle, it's very close right here with this line behind it. I think you either need to move the subtitle over to the left a little bit, so like the edge of the E would kind of be like right in the middle of this black line here. Or this line in the background needs to be like pulled in more, if that makes sense. I'm also noting it's a little uneven with this side. Like the line here feels thinner than the line over here. And they feel a little off center, so just make sure they're aligned all together. It's either they all need to be aligned or they all need to be like pushed more offline if that's what you want. Hi, Beeps. What are you yelling about? Okay? She's just looking at me like, what? What do you want, Mom? Trouble. Birds are trouble. Beeps being a menace, right? Menacing. But yeah, otherwise, I think this looks pretty great. Yeah. Yeah, because it's got good, like, dynamics between, like, the positioning of the characters. There's good, like, through line that kind of leads you around the composition. The title for chapter 10 is, like, centered really well. There's good contrast around it. Anatomy-wise, I think everything's pretty good. I like how, I noticed it on your other art as well, but I really like how you're adding, like, a lot of depth with, like, the shading and line work through your art as well. So that's some good stuff. Did you have any other questions about this one? Now Matic is crying. Ma'am, what are we yelling about? Yeah. Did Dad leave? I'm sorry. That's really hard. It's hard being a bird when your dad goes upstairs. No, very helpful, thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you for submitting. Awesome. Okay, so next we have Bean. Bean. Or Rena. Rena. Hello. Yay! Okay, for the first, I would like specifically look at the character designs. Second, I like critique on the anatomy and posing. Third, a crit of the rendering. Okay. So for this one, I can't go into too much detail about like every single one. I wanted to preemptively apologize for what? But I can do kind of like a general overview of the whole thing. So these look like little sprites for like a game. That would be very fun. But yeah, they definitely feel like game sprites. Yeah, so it feels like you have like two different factions going on. You've got this like red versus the blue. Yeah, I'm finding the red has very like angel demon vibes going on. I mean, you literally have like an angel like creature, and then you have like a knight with like wings, and then you have this very demonic looking king. I was crunched at work, so I didn't have much time to draw. Oh no. It's okay. Like we were saying, December is a difficult month. There's a lot that happens. But yeah, so it's very like angel demon-y through the red, and then there's also a motif with like eyes. I'm noticing like the knight looks like there's like eyes on the shoulder pieces, and then obviously the angel has like this one spooky eye. And then yeah, it's interesting with the blue characters, where I'm getting some like kind of piratey vibes from Ava, and then Saskia and Violet feel a lot more like knightly. Thank you for understanding. Yeah, Saskia gives me very much like soldier vibes, just from like the coat feels very like military. And we love. Does Violet have a unicorn horn? Is this a unicorn mount? That was my intention with them. Okay, I can totally see it then. I think you did a good job there. I also like how there's kind of a through line with this like Saskia has this like butterfly clip in the hair, and then Ava has this like X. It's kind of like not quite a butterfly, but it's like close. I like how there's like kind of a motif going there. Sasuke is low rank with big heart. Yes. Eva will bonk you with giant sword. Violet is a unicorn. Thank God. Thank you for blessing me with this.
Goobert. Goobert. Goobert.
Go, Goobert, go!
Goobert.
Go, Matika! Goobert is the new word that Matika needs to hear in order to be welcomed onto the couch. She is a very neurotic dog. You have to say Goobert. Otherwise she's like, I'm not allowed on the couch. And I don't know how we did this to her. I didn't even... Well, you unconsciously were doing a good job. Yeah, I think something could be done to have a bit more of a through line with, like, the... Goobert. Yeah, I think you could do some more through line with the different factions a little bit more. So, like, I think you could find, like, it doesn't have to be, like, for the blue team, it doesn't have to be, like, the butterfly motif. It could be anything. It could be X's, it could be squares, you know, whatever you want to go with. I think they need, so their colors are very cohesive, and they have a very, like, they have these, like, big eyes and, like, cute proportions and stuff, which makes them feel like the good team to me. I mean, the king looks like a friggin' demon, so that kind of makes me feel like he's the villain. But anyway, so the blue team, I think they need kind of like that cohesive through line. Fado. Fado loves going to the birdcage and like licking the floor because the bird throws things like food bits everywhere. But yeah, anyways, having that design through line, because like Violet, I think like the design could be pepped up a bit if it had that kind of like motif piece to kind of link them to Saskia and Ava. And I think the through line could be pulled a bit more through the, like, again, just like that cohesive bit, whether it's like eyes or circles or I don't know, something pointy like the crown or wings. Like, I don't know what you'd want it to be, but I think they need that like through line with a design motif as well as like the color scheme, because you got the color scheme down. There's actually, he's a minor villain in the grand scheme. He has even stuff going on. Hell yeah. 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 So I think that would be my advice. I also love the king's like body shape. I love this pear body thing that's going on. It's so adorable. Yeah. Do you have any other questions about this? In particular, that was helpful. Awesome. So for the second one, so you're looking for a critique of the anatomy and posing and the folds of the clothes. Okay. So posing wise, I think there's a lot of like character being said through the posing where, I'm sorry, Matika's crying in the background. Oopie. Shush. Yeah, there's a lot of like characterization being said through the posing where like this character looks very like grumpy, no nonsense. just from like the folded arms and like the pointed finger. Yeah. And like the tilt of the head and the expression kind of gives it that vibe. I think you've done a good job with like planting the feet. Like she feels like she's standing on solid ground, which is awesome. Yeah, I think anatomy wise, so posing wise, I think you're doing a great job. Anatomy wise, I think there's a couple issues here and there. So one thing I'm very unsure of is her legs here. I thought this leg on the right was like, I mean, it is ahead of the one at the back, but I thought this space was filled, but it looks like her feet, or there's like some space between her legs there. Oh, good night, Kuroe. Thanks for coming. Whereas just from the placement of her feet, because like her heels are so close together, it's just surprising that there's so much space here between her legs. If you look at like if you covered up the knee down, you'd think like her feet would be wider apart. And also if there is a gap between her legs, you would see the shading of the coat, but I feel like that's just, it was missed because I made too big of a thigh gap. A little bit, just from the posing. Or because her heels are close together, her thighs would be like a little closer. It's fine if there's a gap there, but it's a little too big. And you'd see the coloring of the jacket behind it as well. The other thing, her shoulders feel a bit too narrow in comparison to the size of the forearms. And I think it's also throwing off the neck, which feels a bit too long, but that might just be because the shoulders are like, a bit too skinny. Thick thighs save lives. She doesn't need thick thighs. That's not necessary. I mean, they do save lives, but it's not necessary for the character. As for the folds in the clothing, so first off, I really like the detail of like the button of the pants. It just works really well with just like the shape of like the draped jacket and stuff. It's just a nice little detail that feels very solid. As for the folds, so I think you've done a good job. There's lots of like nice, like you can see tension on the fabric where like the jacket arms are like tied together. There's some good like draping lines. Same with like where you've placed folds on the pants, where you've got some nice little folds like around the hip area where they'd crease. Neck seemed to be a sore spot. They're difficult. Listen, human heads are weird. How do they connect? Yeah. It's hard. The thing is like with heads and necks and shoulders, if one thing is off, the whole thing looks off. It's tricky. I keep getting comic ideas, but I never do it, or I lose motivation. Do you have any tips? That's a hard one, Roses. I'm sorry. I feel ya. I feel ya. Band spines give humans. Yes, we are jellyfish. Let's go. But yeah, but the way you've drawn the folds and stuff in the clothing, I think it works really well. I think you've got a very good handle of like gravity and drapery and like tension on fabric. Yeah, I think it's done really well. It's nice and stylized. Like there's not too much detail, but you can still understand like, you know, the folds on her button shirt. You can see the folds in the like the dark over jacket thing here. at the top. I think it helps. So if the shoulders are a bit wider, you can get a bit more detail on these folds, which I think will help you out a lot. But I think in general, you've done a really good job with that. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any other questions for this one? Let me know. Not particularly? Okay, we're good. We're good. Alright. So this last one, you wanted a critique of the rendering. First off, we stand 10 out of 10. We said trans rights. Yeah, so the rendering, yeah, so the rendering, I think you've done a very good job with showing like the subtle shifts between, so faces are very difficult. Because there are so, it's a self-portrait? I thought so. It was really cute. I like it. Yeah, but anyways, faces have so many just like really subtle shifting planes on them. And I think you've done a very good job with like capturing that. So like showing the subtle difference between like the curve of your cheek and then like the shadow under the nose and above the mouth. Same with like showing the like the eye socket and like under the hair and stuff. I think you've done a really good job there. It can be really easy with like realistic portraits to go like too heavy between these shifts, and it can make like someone's face look really lined and like older. But like here, I think you've done a good job with like keeping the value shifts like subtle but significant enough to understand like the different planes of the face. Yeah, and I think you've done a good job with like bringing attention to like the eyes and the mouth by using like darker colors. I love the shine on the lips. That's so cute. And I also adore the sparkles and the little kitty highlights. That's very important. Yeah, I think the one thing I would say is, so yeah, so I think you've got a really good understanding of the rendering. I think the next step would be to do some cleanup of like the outline stuff. So like for example, under the chin, you've got this like very dark line, which like I think is important. Like you need to keep that contrast to show like the underside of the chin. And I think you have a good like tonal transition with like your neck being darker and then like the skin on your face having more highlight to it. But it's very outlined, and it would be great to see the same kind of like using the rendering to like paint it out instead of like relying on like a thicker outline. Because like if you like throughout your face, like you've done a good job with like the nose and like the details around the mouth and eyes. Like it's very painterly and it doesn't have like a whole lot of outline to it. But yeah, so just as you go out, just like keeping that same amount of detail through it. Same with the hair, like bringing in more detail. It can get less detailed as you like go out from the face. Like generally with like portraiture, that's how it is. Like the face gets a lot of attention, and then as you go out, it can be less detailed because that's not where you want the focus to be. So softer on the outline. in line with the rest of it stylistically. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Because you've got these like very subtle differentiations. It's very like painterly, like within the bounds of your face, and then as you've gone out, it's become a lot more outlined. So just keeping that consistency throughout. Because if you wanted to like have like a more realistic portrait but have still line work on it, you need to like add that same kind of outline throughout. But yeah, I think that would be like a next time thing, not necessarily for this one. Yeah. Did you have any questions about it? Like, was there any part that you were struggling with the rendering or anything you had questions about there? Hold on. Goobert? Goobert.
I don't know what she wants because I went to the back door with her and she looked at me like I was stupid.
Is there water? Does she need water? Is she crying because she's thirsty?
Kind of low. I think what it is I have my headphones on and she thinks I'm going somewhere.
Oh, Monica, we're not going anywhere.
I'm literally sitting here with a blanket on, so I don't know why.
Okay, we've figured out the mystery possibly. So when Bones wears his headphones, it usually means he's gonna take one of the dogs for a walk. And so Manica maybe thought that he was gonna take her for a walk, even though he's sitting on the couch doing writing. What was the puzzle? Tell me Manica's mysterious ways.
Okay. So, I was walking around with my headphones on.
Okay.
So, when I went to the door, she wanted out, but she saw that I had my headphones on, so she was like, oh, we're going on a walk, so I don't need to go outside. Why are you trying to let me outside right now?
Right.
And then she has come to the conclusion that she's not going, and now she wants to go outside.
Right. Okay. So Manica thought she was going for a walk, but it was not to be. So then she was like, well, I still have to pee, so let me outside. Anyway, sorry. Tangent. Okay. Only one question. Is my hair okay? I always feel like it's hard to tame. Your hair is great. What are you talking about? You got cute hair. I think you've done rendering wise. Bones doesn't know how to eat bagels. Tell the news. He keeps dropping his bagels. Like 3 times this week. A bagel has fallen. Okay. They are not difficult. Bagels are not slippery.
Then why are they slipping?
Well, I don't know. That's a you problem. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Bean. Okay. But anyway, style-wise, your hair is adorable. I know, novice bagel eater, hello? Eat bagels or just read about it? Come on. Okay. Rendering-wise, I think you've done a good job with, like, establishing the shape. There's good contrast between like the way you've done shadows and highlights. I think again, it just needs the same like rendering attention as you've done with like the rest of your face. Where you just need to go in with like maybe a smaller brush and do more details and kind of like fill out the locks of hair. Particularly over here, I think you've done a good job where like you've started to kind of outline the different strands where you've got like some little curls coming out. And I think if you just went in and started filling in the details, like it would look fantastic. Yeah. He'll learn with practice. Yeah. So yeah. Does that answer your question? I hope. I apologize for all the distractions throughout this house. It's full of nonsense. Nonsense and silliness all around. Oh, I should mention, I really like this section right here with your hoodie. Where you just got this like subtle little shadow here. I think that's a nice touch. Because it still shows the form but doesn't distract from like the lovely face. That answers it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for submitting. All right. Kladd. Get out of here, Bones. Kladd, my friend. I don't know if you're still here. I saw you at the beginning. My face. You have a lovely face. I gotta say. Hi, Kladd. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so. Yes, so you submitted some painting practice. Okay, so you're worried about contrast on the shadows. I would like tips on how to avoid... Okay, losing contrast while blending. Okay. I have no idea how to get the lips right, as the shading made them less saturated. Which is why I kind of gave up on shading them properly. Please point out any other things you can find. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so first, I love the subtle kind of like tonal shifts with the skin. Like, I love...
It's so good.
It's so good. I love particularly like right here where at the bottom of like the brow bone you've got this like nice little reflective light. Like clearly there's some like bluish light coming from below. And like I love how you've got these like subtle little highlights on the lips and like right here at the bottom of the chin. Like, mwah, so good. Along the ears and stuff and like through the hair. Like that's just so nice. Just really great lighting effects. Right. So... Okay, so you're worried about losing contrast. Oh, bye, Battle Box. Okay. So... I think you have good contrast. Like, there's very good... The lips feel like the problem area. Yeah, because I think you have great contrast, like, on the... Like, the shapes in the ear, for example. Like, there's great contrast between, like, the skin tone and the shadows. You're doing great work with, like, contrast between the different planes of the face. Like, under the chin and around, like, the throat, shapes that I can't remember the name of. You've got great, like, contrast going on here. And very, like, well-defined shapes through the face, like, with the nose and around the eyes. Yeah. It's difficult, because you're... Fado. Mister, we are working right now. Dogs, I swear. Yeah, so I think the problem you may be running into is for your lighting, you're using very saturated colors because you're using this very vibrant teal or cyan kind of for the light that is hitting from below. And I think... I don't know, like, I'm talking about saturation, but I don't think saturation is the issue. Well, okay, maybe it is, because I think, especially with the lips, because the lips are very saturated. They match the hair with the red color. Also the green and blue contrast so well with like the orange and red. That was such a good choice. Right, and if you add shadow, yeah, I think that's the... Yeah, because if you were to shade it, because the light is saturated, you probably want the shadows to be desaturated? Possibly. So yeah, I can see you losing that really nice red tone, and we'd probably have to go to like a more brown color to maybe match like the eyebrows, for example. And I can see you losing that like vibrancy in the lips. I wonder if, like... Because if we look closer, I wonder if maybe... Because you have some really subtle shading going on where, like, there's definition to the lips. Like, you can see the, like, the texture and structure of, like, the different muscles in the lips, right? Where I wonder if when this light hits it, if maybe you need to bring in some of the red through the highlight. So, like, the lightest point of this highlight can still be this teal. But maybe you need to bring in some of, like, the orangey, like, peachy pink as a highlight. So then you can use kind of like your base red color as the shadow, if that makes sense. Because the nice thing about using red is, like, it's a very naturally dark color just on, like, the way our eyes perceive it. So you could probably get away with using, like, a dark saturated red for your shadows on the lips. Yeah, and then you probably would have to lean into like a highlight that would kind of sit between the teal and the red. I know, but that would like push it towards like purple, but I feel like that would lose the color value. This is a tough problem. I'm with you. This is difficult. Yeah, it's definitely hard because you want to keep the saturation. Yeah, I feel like you might have to shift. Yeah, I think that's my advice. Is like, so you know how with your skin tone here with the green, like you're using a very vibrant green for the highlights. I feel like the wetness would reflect the color. Do you mean like reflect the color of the lighting, like the teal? Or do you mean the color of the lip? The teal, yes. Okay. Because I think you're right. Because, like, I think you're on the right track here. Where, yeah, the wet kind of gloss would reflect the teal. Yeah, I wonder if maybe you need to go lighter on the lips. Like maybe the base color for the lip needs to be like a lighter kind of peachy pink so that, yeah, you can lean into these like, this darker red in the shadows. It's hard. You need it to be so that it's not lighter than the shine of the teal. Yeah, so that you can keep your shadows very, like, saturated and crisp. Yeah, that might be part of the problem, is your base color for the lips is already desaturated. Like, it's bright, don't get me wrong, but it's still... Like, I notice it in the bottom lip quite a bit. There's quite a bit of, like, kind of, like, cooler, purplier tones going through, which works for the lighting. But I think, like, for example, if you look at the skin, which is you've got this, like, really saturated green up top, and then as you go into the shadow, it gets more desaturated. And I think you need to maybe apply that to the lips. Like, I think your highlight needs to be even more saturated than it already is. Does that make sense? Am I just saying the same useless thing over and over again? I'm not sure. It's really hard. I know. I'm gonna see if I can find maybe like a reference image. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, I'm having difficulty finding like a decent reference. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Okay, so like if we look at this light, it's hard because this is so like a monochromatic lighting. Not monochromatic, it's like, but anyways, yeah, because this is like bathed in pink, right? Pink light, and then there's these like blue highlights, and some of the transition is like purpley because of that. So I don't know if this is like correct. It's also difficult because like the lips are very close in color to the skin, whereas like in your image, the lips are red and the skin is green, right? Hmm. I wonder, maybe, could you maybe treat it like how you've treated the bottom of the jaw? Like, maybe you need to lean into the blue even more? Because you've got, like, an interesting transition here where it goes from, like, the very vivid blue, and then it transitions to, like, a little bit of desaturated, and then into some more kind of red and green tones. Maybe you need to lean into, like, making the shine in the bottom of the lips even more kind of blue and vivid. And then you could have, like, a small kind of shadow transition that maybe goes for, like, maybe desaturated purple or brown, depending on what works. And then going to your really vibrant reds for the light that's coming from the top. Because that's kind of how you have it working with the rest of the face, where you have this, like, you have the cool blue at the bottom, you have these, like, desaturated transitionary shadows, and then you have this warm light from the top. I was a coward! It's okay. Listen, this is so cool. This is so good. Lighting is so difficult. Oh my god. I feel you. I know, you're definitely giving yourself a challenge here. But yeah, it might help you to keep in mind that, like, when a light is cool, the shadow it casts is warm, and when light is warm, the shadow it casts is cool. So you might have, like, an interesting transition where the shadow that's being cast by the blue light will be warm, so you could get into the warm brown and red, and then transition it to, like, maybe a cooler purple, and then you get into, like, the warm highlight on the red lips. I think that might be the way to do it. You'd have to try it, though. It's difficult. But can I say, I just love all the little detail. Like, you have all these nice little subtle shifts throughout. Like, it's just so nice how you have, like, a really interesting mix of, like, reds and greens and blues throughout, like, the skin tone, even in the lips, even though, like, you're worried about, like, the contrast and, like, rendering not being there. Like, you have these nice little subtle shifts, like, where you can see, like, I don't know the terms, but you can see, like, the difference between, like, the two different muscles on, like, either side of the bottom lip, and then, like, the little bow kind of piece here. Like, it's just so nice. It's so good. Such a good little detail. Yeah. How's the hair and the eyes? So the hair is wonderfully rendered with your line work. Really great contrast between, like, the cool tones of the skin and then the warm tones of the hair. I love the difference between, like, the roots, which are it's kind of like a mix between, like, where the roots are and where the shadows are hitting, but I like how they're, like, this really nice, like, fiery orange, and then they kind of, like, come out to the lighter gold. I think towards the bottom of the hair, how would you do it? But I feel like the teal is being lost a little bit in the, like, in the gold here. I'm trying to think about how you would color shift, because I think you need to kind of color shift the bottom of the hair here where the light would be hitting. So like I think you've got a good sense of where the light will hit. But it would like, yeah, it would hit here, kind of like where the hair is hanging over her collarbone, and then here, yeah, again, same kind of idea, probably at the very bottom of the hair as well, like touching along this edge. And then there'd probably be some shadow here from where her shoulder would be covering the hair, and then you'd have like, yeah, probably more kind of cold light hitting there. Yeah, so I think you might need to like color shift like the whole of the hair down here. It's hard because like you don't want to change it so much that like it looks like a new gradient or something. Like her hair goes from like, I don't know, green to yellow to orange or something. But I think shifting it a little bit so that the hair, so that the light is interacting with the hair a little bit more. It might also help to, instead of using, you're using a lot of like thin strand lines for the hair with the light and how it's reflecting. I wonder if it might be easier to use more kind of like blocks of light for the highlights. And as for the eyes, so I think color-wise you've done a really good job with like rendering. I love all the detail in the eyes. I love all the shininess. I would love to see, so I noticed that like around some of the shines you have that kind of teal, like a teal kind of outline to some of the shine to like show the light. I'm wondering if maybe you need a bit of color over top of the irises. Again, it's difficult because you could lose that like wonderful warm gold color, but I feel like there needs to be like a bit of a gradient shift from like the cool, this like beautiful vibrant teal, like just at the very bottom of the eye, and then have it transition to the gold of like the true color of her eye. Kind of like, because the light would be, because if I go back to that example we were looking at, because if you look at this model's eye, the light is reflecting off like the surface of the eye, if that makes sense, because you have like the, I don't know what you call it, the outer casing of the eye that covers both the whites of your eyes and then the iris and pupil and stuff. So I feel like there'd be more teal light kind of reflecting off like the casing of the eye, and then underneath it would reveal like the true color of like her irises. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd also be interested in seeing some more shadow added to the hair. It's less so kind of through the middle. I think there's a lot of good like use of shadow and stuff. But I find at the top and kind of where the hair touches the forehead, it feels a little flat. I think you could go in with some like really saturated browns and reds and stuff, and kind of build out the shadows a little bit more to kind of match the same detail as the skin. Again, it's difficult because you don't want to lose like the vibrancy of the gold. But even just like subtly, like kind of here where you have some details behind like these larger locks of hair, even just going in and kind of like adding some shadow to those. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, but I'd be interested in seeing some more kind of like contrast in there. Yeah. Does that answer your questions? Was there anything else you were wondering about? Hopefully this was helpful. One last one? Hell yeah. What is it? How are the teeth? Oh, I love the teeth. I didn't mention it before, but I love the teeth so much. You've done such a good job with just like the subtlest little transitions on these little teeth. Where like I love how you've captured like the warm light and the cold light casting on them, where they still, and same with the eyes as well, like the whites of the eyes, they translate as white, but like there's so much gray, there's like green and blue in there. I love your use of like, there's like a dark shadow underneath the kind of glossy light reflection that just makes them feel like they're teeth. Like it's made of enamel. You've got the texture there. But yeah, I love the teeth. So good. 10 out of 10. Good little teeth. Same with the earring. I love the shine. You have a really great way of showing texture with the way you render things through both line work and through your coloring. And I love the little details inside the ear. So gorgeous. So gorgeous. Yes. Yeah. No problem. Yeah. Did you have any other questions? You said one last one, but if you have more questions, please feel free. No, I'm good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So, yeah, I guess that's everyone. Well, thank you, everybody, for submitting, even though December was very busy. So I'll put, for our Patreon supporters, I will put the date for the next stream. Good night. Thanks for staying up. Yeah, so I'll put the dates for the next stream stuff today so that you guys have time to submit something. Because we're going to be doing another critique stream at the end of January. If you're new and you're interested in signing up to get your stuff looked at, we'll be looking at it again, like I said, at the end of January. You just need to sign up for our Patreon, and all the information is there. It's in the description down below, I believe. So yeah, thank you everyone so much for submitting. Yeah, great work as always. I hope my advice was at least a little bit helpful. Yeah, so goodbye. Happy Saturday.